Science, the supernatural, biblical prophecy, global events that threaten to rattle the very foundation of human existence. Critical examinations of the most important issues facing today's modern world. Welcome to the Sharpening Report. And now, your host, Josh Peck.
Hello and welcome to the Sharpening Report. I'm your host, Josh Peck. Tonight, we have a very special returning guest for you to talk about a DVD he recently released with Steve Quayle entitled True Legends. And actually, I have a copy here that I'll show. It's phenomenal. Last time he was on, we talked about CERN, quantum physics, UFOs, and basically everything in between. For those of you new to the show, if you'd like to catch that episode, make sure to subscribe to my channel at youtube.com/JoshPeckDisclosure. And actually, if you're viewing this on YouTube, there should be a little subscribe button in the corner, and you'll be able to find that episode there. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome back to the show my good friend Timothy Alberino. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Josh. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. Last time we went through your testimony, so I won't make you rehash that. But for those who might not be familiar with this DVD, how did you get connected with Steve Quayle to decide to do a project like this?
Oh, that's kind of a long story. I was working with Steve in the beginning, somewhere around 3 years ago, I would say, doing some Spanish content for him, and translating some things. And that's where it started, and gradually getting involved in different kinds of projects until we decided to start Gen 6 Productions, a production company dedicated to focusing on the topic surrounding the narrative of Genesis 6. And we decided to do a documentary film series that would explore some of the different areas around the world that were relevant to that narrative in our minds.
Yeah, it's an absolutely phenomenal DVD. My wife and I watched it together once already, and we plan on doing so again because of the amazing wealth of information, especially in an area that sometimes can kind of seem saturated. There's a lot of people who for years have studied the giants, but of course Steve Quayle's been on the forefront of that. Did you find it difficult at all to find new and unique information in an area of research such as this?
I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of I call it Nephilim Fatigue.
Right.
I think there's a lot of Nephilim fatigue out there in the prophecy circles. A lot of people are sort of rehashing the same kind of stuff. So we wanted to come at it. We wanted to come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. Obviously, Steve Quayle has been studying the subject of Genesis 6 and other things related to it for many years. And so much of our work is based on his books, especially Genesis 6 Giants, as well as True Legends, his book True Legends, and also based on the work of David Flynn. So basically, the work of Steve Quayle, the work of David Flynn, we sort of fuse those two things together, and that's really the topic, the subject matter that we've been tackling. However, in terms of coming at this from a different angle, we have been involved in different kinds of explorations, investigations, expeditions that are very proprietary, very unique to Gen 6 Productions. We've talked to people and gone places that I've never seen before. Not personally, but of course, I've never been to these places before, but also I've never seen them featured in any of the documentaries or presentations that I've been aware of. So we have a lot of unique content, especially in the episode that we're currently working on, episode 2, which we're not releasing the title yet, but it's going to be forthcoming. Episode 1, for those who've seen episode 1, it lays the foundation for what we're doing. It introduces myself. It introduces Steve Quayle. It introduces the theme of Genesis 6, and that was the purpose of it more than anything else. Episode 2 is, I can tell you, much faster, much more content, much more surprising stuff. We have interviews. We're talking with people in episode 2. We're involving more people in episode 2, people who are familiar probably to your audience. Some of the individuals in our film, some of them may not be. And we're tackling some of the most dire subjects, I think, in the so-called prophecy arena, which include, of course, we started off talking about megaliths and the technology of the fallen in the first episode, but now we're moving into more of the cover-up that we're discovering to be existent all over the earth. When you're dealing with megaliths, when you're dealing with the pre-Adamic world, pre-flood world, I'm sorry, also the pre-Adamic world, and we're also dealing with, in episode 2 and the episode following episode 2, episode 3, which features content that I'm sure nobody has ever seen.
Wow.
And as does episode 2. So episode 1 was sort of a launching pad for us. It was a very basic introduction into who we are, into what we do. And episode 2 and 3, we're the pedals to the metal in episode 2 and 3. And there's a lot of stuff coming out from us in the future that I'm sure people have never seen before.
Yeah, that's amazing, because when Christina and I watched episode 1, I mean, honestly, we were blown away by it. I mean, not only is the quality just fantastic, but the content is unique, and it holds your interest through the whole thing. When we were watching it, the time just, it went by really fast. But so we're really excited, as I'm sure most of the audience is too, for episode 2 and 3. One thing that was really cool that you brought up already a little bit about, but was the expeditions that are actually in the film. What were some of the most fascinating places that you visited, and what about them did you find especially interesting?
Are you referring to just the first episode or everywhere that we've been since then?
Well, may as well go everywhere.
I am most fascinated by some of what I saw in Rome and in Sardinia.
And is that for episode 2?
Yeah, Rome and Sardinia are going to be featured in, Rome is going to be featured in episode 2. Sardinia is coming in episode 3. And it's not just Rome. We were also in Malta. We were in various places. And I was, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give too much away, but I was very impressed. I don't think impressed is the right word. I was struck by the atmosphere in Rome, especially around the Vatican. We were at the Vatican right after the attacks that took place in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And so there was high security everywhere. In fact, while we were there was a very credible threat against the Vatican, and the Vatican went dark one of the nights that we were actually filming. And when I mean it went dark, all the lights at the Vatican were off. Vatican City was dark, which doesn't happen. That's not normal. They only do that if there's some sort of a threat. And one of the nights we were filming, it was all dark. So we're walking around the Vatican. Virtually nobody else was around, and there were heavily armed military personnel everywhere. And we were walking around. We happened to be walking around with an individual who is, let's just say he's a dangerous individual to be walking around with at the Vatican. So we were actually able to I got to be careful. I don't want to say too much here. We were actually able to shoot some film inside of a very notorious building. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Inside of the headquarters of a very notorious institution, and with a very interesting person, who I said this person is a very dangerous person, not in the sense that he's dangerous to us or to anybody listening to this program, but dangerous to the system, dangerous to the secret societies and to the Vatican itself in terms of information, in terms of the information that he has. So it was a very surreal situation. It was a very serious situation in Rome. And the stuff that we're tracking with, the stuff that we're investigating, we're not doing it because it's fun. We're not doing it because it's safe. We're doing it because it's necessary. And that means that we're interacting with people and we're going places that are in some cases and in some ways perilous. I don't want to overstate it, but I also don't want to understate it. The information that we're releasing and our other colleagues in the field is of the utmost importance in this time in history, because we are on the cusp of a revelation that is coming to the earth that is going to be earth-shattering. And everything is culminating towards this new paradigm. And so the kind of information that we're releasing, the kind of investigations that we're doing, as well as you guys, Tom Horn, and other individuals in the field, is a threat to those individuals who are hoping to perpetrate a lie on the masses and really want their lie to be as effective as possible. So we have a saying, something that Steve Quayle has said for many years, and it's really the motto of episode 2 of our documentary series. Which again, I can't say the title yet. We'll be announcing that shortly. But our motto for episode 2 is "Those who control the past determine the future." That's the motto for our second episode. And we really want people to understand, and we're attempting to try and make it clear to people that in order to understand what's coming in terms of the deception, in terms of the events that are coming to the earth, in order to rightly discern them and to be able to define them in a proper context, we have to understand what happened in the deep prehistoric past of this planet. Yeah. And because they correlate directly. That's the context. The context for what's coming, for what will be, is what was. And I'm fairly certain that that when we release our episode 2 in the spring, that I think it's finally going to click for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are finally going to understand why it is so important to continue to talk about all of this stuff and to continue to investigate and explore the true narrative of the prehistoric world. And when I say the prehistoric world, of course, I'm referring to the antediluvian world, the world before the flood of Noah.
Yeah, I hear you, and that makes a lot of sense. And I know that was something that David Flynn was passionate about as well, and you brought him up earlier. How does the work of David Flynn help drive some of the research that you and Steve are doing?
Well, David Flynn's work and Steve's work, they were good friends, and they corresponded many times. David and Steve's work go hand in hand, because whereas Steve really lays out the Genesis 6 narrative in his works, especially Genesis 6 Giants and True Legends, and deals with the giants, focusing mainly on the giants, the offspring of the Watchers. David Flynn sort of steps back and takes a look at the overarching picture. And so whereas Steve deals with more of the everything relating to giants and the hybrid offspring of the Watchers and everything that relates with that, David Flynn was looking at the overarching occultic narrative connected to the whole thing. He was very much interested in Mars and how Mars fit together with everything else, which is absolutely crucial to understand. Flynn was very mathematically minded. I didn't know him personally, but I've read his works. And the most relevant of Flynn's works is Cydonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars. Because at first glance, someone might think, well, what does Mars have to do with anything? But in truth, it has to do with everything. Mm-hmm. It has to do with everything. So, and I find it interesting, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole. I know this is a very touchy, explosive subject, and you're sure to get some comments on it.
Hey, it wouldn't be the Sharpening Report if there wasn't a good amount of controversy, so by all means, go for it.
I find it interesting that David's work is so relevant, mm-hmm. more relevant now than it was when he wrote it before he passed away, 2012. It's so relevant to what's happening right now, and yet, at the same time, it's being written off by masses of people who are subscribing to the flat Earth theory.
Oh yeah.
Because if you subscribe to flat Earth, then you might as well throw David Flynn's book away.
Yeah, you can't use you can't use any of it.
You really can't. Which is a shame, because mm-hmm. the work that he's done, the investigations into Cydonia and into the ancient past and into the symbology of the occult and so forth, I'm sure you've read his books, is second to none. It's second to none.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't blow your mind, you didn't read it slow enough, and you didn't take enough care and time. So I find that disconcerting that right now, at this point in time, Flynn's work is so important, and yet mm-hmm. it's being derailed, in a sense, for many people because of the flat Earth controversy.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I know this is something that we've talked about off camera as well, and all the discussions that we've had about it, I agree with your line of thinking. Do you think that this the whole flat Earth thing, and just for the audience out there, if you happen to believe in this or if you don't, we're not out to insult anybody or make fun of anybody. I think ultimately we all just want the truth. But do you think that some of this might be deliberate? That there might be like a deliberate obfuscation from the truth, or is it just people are mistaken? Or what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the most important issues of our time deal with some of the revelations that are forthcoming on Mars, mm-hmm. and also to do with disclosure, as some people call it, the alien disclosure, and outer space and the moon and so forth, and especially as it relates to the past. So I can see how a false narrative of a flat Earth could derail a lot of investigators, could derail a lot of Christians especially, from really digging any deeper into those pertinent topics. Those topics dealing with outer space, dealing with Mars, dealing with our solar system, and so forth. So, and I've noticed that a lot of people have been derailed.
Yeah.
A lot of people have just completely discredited anything at all that has to do with space, mm-hmm. Which I think is a great error especially in the context of what's coming down the pipe here very shortly. We know, for example, that the Jesuits are very, very interested in outer space, that they are not only on Mount Graham, but in other places around the world, are monitoring activity that's happening out there. We know that amateur astronomers using commercial grade telescopes can now take photographs of the planets, some of the planets, including Saturn, with its rings. And the planets are clearly spherical. Mm-hmm. So I think, having weighed all of the evidence in the balance, and people may accuse me of not having seen the evidence, that is untrue. I have looked into the flat Earth controversy extensively. I think that there's a lot of good points. I think there's a lot of valid points that are made. And there's every reason in the world to be suspicious of NASA.
Yes.
And other organizations that are dealing with space. But, again, having weighed all of the evidence in the balance, I think that there's much more evidence on the side of NASA being involved in a cover-up, not of the shape of the Earth, but of what's really happening out there.
Right.
What's really going on, what's really present on the planets, what's really orbiting around the Earth, and the nature of our solar system and so forth. So, yes, there's a cover-up. Yes, NASA lies, but NASA really isn't our space program. NASA's a dog and pony show. The real space program has been in operation since right after World War II, and is far more advanced than anything that NASA has ever put forth. So NASA's for public consumption. It's almost a red herring. It's almost a straw man.
Yeah.
Because it's theatrics. It's Shakespeare. So I think it's an error to discount anything that has to do with outer space because you subscribe to flat Earth theory. Now, if you want to subscribe to flat Earth theory, that's fine. Again, much of the data and the research done on it, I would say, is compelling. Mm-hmm. But subscribe to it with an open mind. Don't discount the works of David Flynn, for example, and others. Richard Hoagland, David Flynn, and others. Don't discount the fact that there's a secret space program and has been since right after World War II. Don't throw those things in the trash bin because now you subscribe to Flat Earth. That's ignorant.
Right.
So if you're going to subscribe to Flat Earth, don't be so dedicated to it, so dogmatic about it, that your mind is completely closed to the other possibilities.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Sorry,
and that seems to be happening.
Yeah.
That seems to be happening, and that's what concerns me. That's what concerns me. There's a lot of theories that I have in my head that are floating around that I've investigated that I don't subscribe to them wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm. I shelve them, put them in the background, I file them away, and I call it floating. You float the ideas in the background, in the back of your mind. You don't sell out to them. The only thing I sell out to is the gospel.
Amen.
I'm sold on the gospel of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I can never be convinced otherwise because not only do I believe what I've read in the scriptures, and just on the scriptures alone, I would be sold on the gospel. But apart from that, also all of the personal experience of my own life and the encounters that I've had have proven to me that the gospel is absolutely, unequivocally true, no matter what. And so that's my firm foundation. But most of the other stuff, I float. Again, when I say I float, it's something I take and I throw up into the stratosphere of my thoughts, and it's floating up around, it's floating up there in my thought pattern, my thought construct, and I weigh in the balance every angle of everything that I have floating. And so, for example, you take the information on the flat Earth and you look at it and you say, is it legitimate? Some of the research, do they have legitimate concerns? And the answer is yes. So you take it and you float it. Mm-hmm. You don't discount everything else and replace everything else with flat Earth theory. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. That's ignorant. And that's my concern for a lot of people. So I would admonish those who are subscribing to flat Earth, fine, but float it. Don't throw everything else in the trash bin. Don't sell out to flat Earth. Flat Earth is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. It's not the foundation of our faith. So it ought to be considered, but it ought not disqualify other possibilities. Because you'll find yourself in a very dangerous place, and the great danger here is the possibility of a psyop by NASA or by other organizations that are observing things coming at us from outer space or flying around out there, or some other phenomenon that they're very interested in. And that's a fact. They are very, and when I say they, I'm talking about the institutions such as the NSA, such as NASA, the Jesuits, and other institutions around the world that are very interested and very concerned, and are preparing even now for a paradigm shifting revelation. And it's not that the Earth is flat. Mm-hmm. So again, that's my admonishment to people. I'm not getting down on people who subscribe to flat Earth. I'm not saying they're stupid or that they should entirely discount it. I'm just saying don't discount everything else for flat Earth. Don't sell out to it so wholeheartedly that you basically become very religious and dogmatic about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's extremely wise, and I agree with you about when we research things and look into things as possibilities, kind of keeping them on the back burner for now until a time comes where we get more information, or and then never being fully sold out on anything except the gospel of Jesus Christ. I think that's a really wise way to handle it, and that's how I try to handle my research as well. Just because we're on the topic, and I'm curious, because a lot of people who believe in the spherical Earth, and I'm in that camp, will sometimes ask the people who believe in flat Earth, what would it benefit the powers that be to cover up that the world is flat? Why is there a lie or a deception? So in the case of that this might be a psyop, what would the benefit be for causing people to believe that the Earth is flat? How does that benefit the goals of the enemy?
Well, it's about again, I'll use the term discrediting. It's about discrediting the community of researchers, especially Christian researchers, who for years have been very interested in the possibility of a secret space program, mm-hmm. in the possibility of bases on Mars, bases on the moon. Obviously, in the possibility, and I shouldn't say possibility, I should say the assurity of the UFO phenomenon, of the alien phenomenon. And so if you can get people to subscribe to flat Earth, much of that is immediately no longer relevant to you. Mm-hmm. So it becomes neutralized. That information, that kind of investigation becomes neutralized in the minds of the masses. Mm-hmm. And That's one end of it. But then they would very much like to label anyone who doesn't believe um, that NASA is telling the truth, or who questions whether or not we've already been involved in projects on Mars. Anybody who talks about Stargates or jump rooms, anybody who deals with the UFO phenomenon, they would love to label us all collectively as flat earthers.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better term. There's no better term that signifies ignorance. There's no better term with which to demonize masses of people that you want to portray as being ignorant, Neanderthalic idiots
Mm-hmm.
than to label them as flat earthers. Because everybody knows about the flat earth controversy that happened centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even Obama uses the term to take a shot at people who he views as being outmoded and ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
So we can already see that it is a term that, for lack of a better term, our enemies would love to use against us, to shut us up, to discredit us, to distract us, to get us to discredit and to discount all of the investigation that has accumulated over the years concerning the secret space program, concerning ufology, the alien agenda, concerning even such topics as Nibiru, Planet X, all of these issues that have become very popular on the internet and that many people have done research into because of the advent of YouTube. Let's just say, let's use NASA for example. NASA, not just NASA, but certainly NASA, are concerned that they can no longer control the possibility that real content concerning UFOs, concerning aliens, concerning all kinds of things is going to show up on the internet.
Yeah.
And it does. Let me say that as a matter of fact. It does. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and all over the internet that depict real phenomena, real UFOs. In some cases, I think there's probably pictures of real aliens on the internet.
Yeah.
But you'll never know what they are. You'll never know which ones are real because of all of the fake ones that are thrown into the mix. So the MO used to be, back in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, if you read the works of, for example, Carla Turner and others who were early on exploring and investigating alien abductions and the UFO phenomenon, if you read their books, you'll find out that a lot of ufologists, early ufologists, were disappearing and dying under mysterious circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
That early on, a lot of ufologists were getting visits, and I shouldn't say ufologists. I should say a lot of people who were having encounters, who were seeing things, or who were being abducted, were being followed up by subsequent visits from what were referred to and are to this day the Men in Black.
Yeah.
Which is a very real phenomenon. These soulless individuals, or what appear to be soulless, non-human, but human-like individuals who approach people who are used to threaten them, to shut up. And that was the MO back in the 80s and 90s. It no longer appears to be that way, except in extreme circumstances. And there's a very logical reason why they've changed their tactics. Their tactic being, of course, disappearing and killing people or intimidating people back in the early days of ufology. Now, it is much easier to discredit you than to kill you.
Yeah.
It's much easier if you upload a video on YouTube that depicts a very credible UFO sighting. It's much easier to attack your video with trolls,
Mm-hmm.
and to put up debunking videos, and to besmirch your name on the internet, and to put up a bunch of videos associated with your video that are fake, and they're obviously fake.
Hey, for those of you at home, you're not gonna see the where this actually happened because I'll edit it out. But this is the second time that Tim and I have run into technical difficulties in this interview and recording, which has never happened before. We're both recording from our respective studios, so the internet quality is excellent. No wireless or anything. We're running straight through Ethernet. We've both recently used this same setup for different interviews. Also, I've done over 100 of these, and I've never had any issues like this yet. Yet we're running into interviews or problems in this interview. So we're gonna keep going, but I wanted to make mention of it because as I was saying to Tim just a second ago, this path that we've been taking in conversation here wasn't really planned. I had totally different questions, but since we deviated down this path, we've been running into these issues, which, you know, there may or may not be something to that, but in any regard, I think that it's a good idea to stay on this new deviation of of discussion, even if we have to fight through these difficulties, because be it whatever the source of the problem is, it would be, I think, easy to say that somebody doesn't want this information out, which means we want this information out. So, Tim, continuing on from the last thing you said, you had mentioned that it's easier to discredit somebody with a true video by putting up other videos that are obviously fake.
Yeah, infinitely easier and less risky, obviously, than killing somebody or framing somebody or something of that nature. The internet is an amazing tool for accruing knowledge, but it's also an amazing tool and an effective tool for besmirching somebody's reputation or destroying somebody's research, or discrediting somebody's content. It's a very easy thing to do, and that's what's being done at this point. So people ask, why is this person still alive if their research is so important, or if this information is so dangerous, why is the person still alive? You know, this is a question that's asked all the time of many of the researchers in the field that are talking about, both believing and non-believing researchers that are talking about the UFO phenomenon and aliens and giants and the Illuminati and so forth. And the answer is, of course, very simple. And it is because it is infinitely easier to discredit them than to kill them. And much more effective, because if you kill somebody, then you validate their research.
Yeah, they become a martyr.
You kill somebody, then suddenly people take interest in their books and in their videos or whatever they're doing or whatever they did. Like, for example, Malachi Martin.
Yeah.
Malachi Martin, most people know who he was, but the Jesuit priest, very high-ranking Jesuit priest, who, of course, came clean about the activities of the Jesuits and about the satanic nature of the Vatican in many respects, and died in a very mysterious way. And after he died, basically the way he died validated in a lot of people's minds his research, his books. He put most of his information into a fictional narrative, but because he had to. But there's no question in my mind that Malachi Martin was killed, and that's just one example. They killed him, and then he became sort of a very interesting and important figure in the conspiracy circles concerning the Vatican.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I agree with you that it does make more sense now, living in the age that we live in, discredit somebody, or and something that you mentioned briefly too is how easy it is to destroy, just get rid of somebody's research. I mean, most of the research that we do is online. We save things on computers, and we don't always have a hard copy available, especially if we're working on a book or something like that. I know me, I back everything up on flash drives and stuff, but even that. It would be infinitely easier for if somebody was inclined to hack into my computer and erase everything, and then I'd have to start from scratch, or
Exactly.
or decide that move on to something else, or something like that.
Exactly. Or uh, insert into public view on the internet. Insert into the circles of people who are interested in the research topics a psyop,
Right.
such as perhaps a flat Earth psyop or something like that. So there are many tools at their disposal, and murder is probably at the bottom of their list at this point. Now, having said that, I probably should address what most people are waiting for me to address, which is the situation concerning my family and myself that occurred the other week.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is something that later on in the show we'll get into viewer questions, but a number of people did write me and really wanted to know, and also even more than that, people wrote in to say that they are praying for you, and they're glad that you and your family are okay. So that was really
And we're very appreciative of everybody's support. It's been overwhelming.
so. What
And
what was the whole thing that happened?
well,
And
let me say this: I can't say too much about it.
sure.
But those who want to know more about it can go and listen to the Hagman and Hagman broadcast that we did, Steve and I, with Doug and Joe. I think it's called Perilous Times.
Okay.
You can look it up on YouTube, Hagman and Hagman Perilous Times, and you'll see it. And I go through the whole story there. I won't do it again here, but I went through the whole story there. Didn't give all the details, but many of the most important ones. For those who don't know, it was a carbon monoxide situation in my house. We nearly died. And we don't know, we still don't know if it was an accident or if it was intentional. We don't know. There's a possibility on both sides. Could have been an accident, could have been intentional. There are many strange things associated with it. Many weird things have happened leading up to that event, and then are still happening even now. We've had some security concerns unrelated to that situation. So we do not have an open investigation with the government going, frankly, because if it was intentional, then our enemies would be institutions that are far too powerful to be implicated by any sort of local government investigation. So it's basically it's a futile endeavor. But we do have a private investigation going on in the background. We have security, and again, all I can say is we don't know definitively if it was an accident or if it was an intentional, but the possibility does exist that it was intentional. And I don't want people to walk away thinking I'm saying, as a matter of fact, that somebody tried to kill me. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a 50-50 kind of a situation in my mind, but we are being very vigilant. And regardless of whether or not it was an intentional operation against me and my family, regardless, the fact remains that I'm only alive now, and my family is only alive because of the grace of God. I mean, it was a miraculous situation that we were able to wake up and get out of the house before we would have never woken up again. So that I can say definitively, that we were delivered from death, and whether an accident or intentional, we appreciate everybody's prayers and their support. Either way, it was a traumatic event, and again, we're overwhelmed with the kindness and the prayers and the kind words that have been sent our way from you guys and from everybody else out there that know us and have been listening to us. So that's where that is. And let me add that incident, the carbon monoxide incident, was not an isolated incident in terms of the suspicious things.
Oh, wow.
That had been going on. That wasn't just an isolated incident. So whether intentional or accidental, there are a handful of other very suspicious things going on, and that have been going on. And frankly, we feel like we're under surveillance for many reasons. I won't go into the details, but we have security now, and are being very vigilant. So we're fine, though. We're fine. I'm fine. My family's fine. Steve and everybody else here, we're all doing great, and we are pressing forward, fully engaged. We're passionate, even more so than before. And so we're driven now to complete the work that we've begun more than ever. So if it was intentional, it's going to backfire.
Well, praise God for that.
But again, I don't know if it was or not. I don't know. It's 50-50. I don't know. And I may never know.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, praise God that you're okay, and that God's definitely has you and your family under protection, and Steve and everybody else involved in all this. And for the viewers at home, I know many of you already are. I'd ask you to keep Tim and his family in prayer, and all of us researchers, because we never know who's out there. We're I mean, whether researcher or not, whether fringe or not, if you're a Christian, you have a target on your back. We have a very real and powerful enemy who's been around for millennia, and who loves nothing more than to kill and destroy us. So even if just for that, keep us all in prayer.
But thank God that greater are those who are with us than those who are against us.
Amen.
And that is the reality. That's the powerful, overarching reality that we as believers have in Christ. That those who are with us are far mightier than those who are against us. And we're on the winning side, regardless of whatever happens. Our King, our sovereign reigns, and the devil will ultimately be crushed and put under our feet once and for all. As all of this unfolds, as everything unfolds that's happening in terms of the end of the age, in terms of the machinations of the occult, the Illuminati, the Vatican, everything happening in the background. It's important to remember and to be salient of the fact that the end of the story has already been written. Mm-hmm. So there's a battle to be fought, but it is an inevitable victory. Inevitable victory. So we run the race with endurance, and the most important race that we're running as believers isn't any kind of investigations or any of the work that we're doing in our professional lives or the books that we're writing. The most important race to run as a believer is to keep the faith. Is to keep the faith and to produce the fruit that is becoming of a believer, and to mature in our walk with Christ and our understanding of the gospel and our adherence to the gospel. And that is the most important task. That's the race that we're all running. We're all running it together in terms of we're all up against the same adversarial powers. We're all believing in the same gospel. And so that is a collective battle that we're all fighting together, regardless of whether people listening are researchers or know this or that, or that doesn't matter. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ and you adhere to the gospel of Jesus Christ, then we're on the same battlefield. That is the most crucial aspect of any believer's life. Everything else is secondary. Everything else is secondary to one's foundation in the gospel, one's understanding of the gospel, one's adherence to the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is foremost. That takes precedent over everything. And as I always say, and always will say, everything else, like spokes connecting to the hub of a wheel, everything else branches off of and is dependent on that one reality, the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's why all of these ufologists out there and researchers and investigators who are unbelieving in the gospel of Jesus Christ are never going to put the pieces together correctly. Never. Because they've taken out the central figure. They've taken out the who and the why. And there's no way that they can make the pieces fit together appropriately. Once you've removed Christ, once you've removed the gospel of Jesus Christ, you can't put the puzzle together. You can't. Because everything is about Jesus. Everything. The Bible tells us, makes no qualms about the fact that everything revolves around and is centered on the Son of God. That he is, not only was creation made through him, but it was made for him, the Bible tells us. Through him, and by him, and for him. That means that Jesus Christ is literally the center of everything. So that's why it is the prerogative of a believer in Jesus Christ to search out the truth. Because we're the only ones who truly can.
Yeah.
We're the only ones who truly can. Because, if you don't have Christ in the center, then you'll never put the pieces together. You're ultimately buying into the greatest lie of all, which is a denial of the gospel. The greatest deception of all, I should say, which is a rejection of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the gospel of Jesus Christ isn't just some sort of a religious ideology. The gospel of Jesus Christ, at a very fundamental level, concerns every aspect of human existence. It concerns every aspect of the history and future of this very planet. It's not just some religious construct that has to do with the conduct of men. No. The gospel of Jesus Christ is just as relevant to nature as it is to mankind, because it is the redemption of mankind, and it is because of the fall of mankind that nature finds itself in the distressing state of death and decay. So the gospel, the redemption through Christ, the restoration of our species, of the human race, is so intricately weaved into everything that's happening, woven, I should say, into everything that's happening, that if you remove it, you have a mess. You have no way to put the pieces together properly. So, again, I said all that to make the point that really, as researchers, as ambassadors of truth, believers in Jesus Christ are the most appropriate people to understand, to digest, and to divulge truth.
Amen. I could not have said that better myself, and if for nothing else, all the technical problems that we've been having and everything, it's all worth it just to get that point across, that it all, like you said, it all does center on Jesus Christ and our relationship with him. I'm really glad that you brought that out and have that outlook. I think a lot of times it's easy for us just as Christians to get involved in the things that we're involved in, or if we are researchers, to get too deep into it and maybe forget sometimes what we really are doing this for. And I think sometimes it takes really it's a tap on the shoulder from God, either in the form of a situation in life or something said from a person such as yourself, that why we, a reminder why we really are doing this, what our true motivation is, and why we are going to soldier on through whatever the enemy might throw at us, even death. So I really appreciate that you said that, and for the audience as well.
Yeah, we are involved. We are involved, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who you are, no matter what your line of work is,
we're all in it together.
If you're a stay-at-home mom,
yep,
or if you're some kind of a professional on Wall Street or in the military, we are all, as a species, involved in the most epic story imaginable, and it is unfolding. Whether you believe it or not, whether you subscribe to it or not, whether you pay attention to it or not, it doesn't matter. Because I love the saying in the I think it was the third Matrix title, everything that has a beginning has an end.
Yep.
And this all has a beginning that is moving towards an inevitable end. And it's not going to stop. So we're all along for the ride. And those of us who are in Christ are not only along for the ride, we're central figures in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what redemption is all about. He came to redeem us. And so that is, and it's so important for people to grasp how relevant that is to everything. Because let me tell you, there is something going on in the universe before the human race came into existence. We did not start everything. We're not the center of everything. See, that's right. A perspective that a lot of Christians have way off.
Yeah.
We're not the center of everything. They can't imagine a world without the human race. They can't imagine something happening, something of any import taking place without us being involved, which is the wrong perspective entirely.
Mm-hmm. Because
again, it doesn't center around us; it centers around the Father and His Son. So we have the very humanistic perspective on everything, which distorts our understanding and causes a lot of problems for us. But when we did appear on the scene, it was something unique. It was something so consequential that I believe that all of creation, that all of the other entities that existed before us, and they did, the sons of God, the Benai Elohim, shouted for joy when the earth was created, when they saw the Son of Man creating everything. And that was before we came on the scene.
Yep.
So, and these guys are called the sons of God. So they had a relationship with the Father before the human race ever existed. So when we came into existence, when Adam was created in the garden, this was an event that all of, for lack of a better term, all of heaven was watching this event happen. When the Father decided to create mankind, this was consequential. This was an amazing happening. This was something that everything else, everybody else, all the other creatures and entities took notice of. Suddenly we showed up on the scene and we were created in His image and given a special authority and given a special relationship with Him. And so our appearing on the scene set into motion something that is in motion even now, something that had a beginning and that has an end. And so we're along for the ride in this epic story. And again, those of us who are the human race is along for the ride, whether they like it or not. And those of us who are believers in the Lord Jesus Christ are not just along for the ride. We are central We're central part of an essential part of the story, because we now are heirs with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And the culmination of this story, in terms of the earth, is Jesus Christ ruling and reigning as supreme sovereign on this planet. He has all authority in heaven as the Son of God, and all authority on the earth will be given to him as the Son of Man. So when he occupies the throne of his father David, which he has not yet done, that is the culmination of the prophecies concerning him. And it is an inevitable event. It happens, it has to do with us, with the human race. It has to do with Jesus becoming like us. In other words, becoming human, wearing our flesh, wearing Adam, so to speak, putting on Adam. And it has to do with, quite frankly, it has to do with the ultimate conspiracy against the Lord and his anointed Jesus, and against all of us who are heirs of the kingdom and who are hidden in Christ, who are redeemed from the world, redeemed from the power of this world, of this present darkness. And so it's a very real battle. It is a very salient reality. And whether somebody spends 8 hours a day playing video games and wasting time, or whether they're plugged in and engaged in the gospel, you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it. And ultimately, the reality of everything that's happening will become apparent to you at some point in time. And unfortunately, for many people, it becomes apparent moments after they die.
Yeah,
and they find themselves in a very unpleasant place.
Yeah, when it's too late to do anything about it.
It's too late, but the reality, the truth becomes very apparent, painfully apparent, and that reality will be with them for the rest of eternity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's much better to wake up now, realize what's going on, understand the gospel, adhere to the gospel, receive Christ, and become involved in the unfolding of this story. Not just passive involvement, but very intentional involvement. And again, let me clarify, that doesn't mean researching giants. It doesn't mean going on expeditions. It doesn't mean writing books. That's not what it means. Mm-hmm. That's what we happen to do because that's part of our calling and part of our profession. But when I say get involved, it doesn't matter if you're a housewife, doesn't matter who you are. Being involved means you're plugged into the gospel, you're cultivating relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, and you're maturing in the faith.
Amen. I again, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm constantly blown away when things like this happen. You know, just I don't know. It's just funny. I have a whole list of questions that we didn't get to, and I'm so glad that we didn't. It always blows my mind when God takes things in a different direction like this, totally unplanned, but so much better than it would have been regardless. And I think that there are people watching now that really need to hear this stuff. And maybe it's the first time for you at home. Maybe it's the first time that you've heard this. Maybe you already knew this, and it's a reminder. But everything that we're talking about here is it's truth. It's important in our day-to-day lives to keep this stuff in mind and our true motivations on why we do the things that we do. And I wholeheartedly agree with you, Tim. It doesn't matter what God has called somebody else to do, or different Christians have different jobs. We're all a part of the same body. Some are a hand, some are an eye. That whole thing. So not everybody's going to be researchers or write books or be on TV, but that doesn't make us any more important than anybody else. I think we're all equal. But if I had to put importance on any one thing, I would say it's those prayer warriors out there that are praying for the body, and that are actually keeping in mind to pray for people, Christians that are under persecution in the Middle East, or I mean, just my own humanity. I'll admit it. That's not something I think about every day to do, but there are people that are called to do that, and they do it, and that's extremely important. And I think that's, from my own personal perspective, and again, this is just my own humanity, so it's in God's eyes, I think it's all equally important. But I think being called to do that's far more important than being on TV and doing that stuff. But again, from God's perspective, it's all important because He's called each and every one of us to do something. We all have a purpose. He doesn't do anything in vain. So everyone watching at home, you have a purpose, and if you haven't found it yet, purpose doesn't always mean occupation. Sometimes your job might not have anything to do with your purpose besides just providing for your family and things like that, which of course we're called to do too. But find your purpose. Ask God wholly and humbly what your purpose is, and get busy. Do what He's called you to do. And like Tim said, it's different for everybody. It might be writing. It might be all that stuff, or it might be praying or staying in the Word and getting closer to Jesus and focusing on that for a while before something else. And that's the other thing too. Whatever your ultimate purpose is, there's steps involved. I mean, I didn't start off writing. I for the longest time I didn't want anything to do with writing. I hated it. But now because it's what God's called me to do, I love it, and I'm very passionate about it, and the types of research that we do here. So just for I just don't want people at home to think that whatever they're doing, even if it's just praying or whatever, that it's not enough, because it is in the eyes of the Lord, and to those who are paying attention, it's important enough, and we're all in this together.
I think that many Christians have a grasp of the doctrines of Christianity. Many Christians have a grasp of the importance of prayer and reading the Bible and so forth. The trappings also of Christianity. But I think very few Christians have a grasp of the story, the underlying story. That's how I tend to view things, is in the form of a narrative, of a story. When I read the Bible, when I think about the universe, when I contemplate the human condition and so forth, I think about it in terms of a story. I approach it the way I always have since I've been a child, which is to see the story, to find the story. The story is what's really important. More than the dogma, the story. If you understand the story, then you understand the important doctrines that go along with it. If you don't understand the story, then you're holding on to dogmas and doctrines that you don't really comprehend. You're just doing it for the sake of religion, for lack of a better term. And the story of the gospel, which is intrinsic to the story of the human race, is so absolutely amazing. It is the most dramatic story that could ever be told. It is dramatic both in terms of of the dreadful consequences associated with being on the wrong side of the gospel, and it's dramatic in the unimaginable joys and pleasures that are associated with receptance of the gospel. But the story itself is so misunderstood because we've all gone through, most of us who are Christians and who have been for a long time, have gone through some kind of what I call Sunday school indoctrination. See, when I was in Sunday school, and I don't mean this to be a slight to anyone, but I think that Sunday school was one of the most detrimental things that's ever happened to my mind.
Yeah.
That's ever happened to my thought process during the formative years of my life, because a Sunday school robs you of the adventure of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you spend time as a child coloring pictures of a goofy looking hippie Jesus with sandals and a big, thumbs up and a big smiley face or something,
Mm-hmm.
what's unintentionally happening, or whether it be of the prophet Elijah or Noah or Moses or whoever, what's happening unintentionally and inadvertently is you're being indoctrinated with a very banal perspective on the story.
Mm-hmm.
So many people with good intentions are trying to tell you as a child the story, of the Bible, of the gospel, but they're presenting it to you as a child, in most cases, in most churches, in a way that strips out of it every all the good parts, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
All the adventurous parts, all the dynamic parts, all the deep parts are stripped out. And so, in a very real sense, what you're left with is a color book paradigm of the gospel. And of course, all the goofy plays and all the different things that are part of church life for so many people end up being very detrimental in the end to their perspective as believers. Because I found that I had to rediscover. I understood the tenets of the gospel, and I've always had a relationship with the Lord. I had and do to this day, a very good father. My mother died when I was 14, but I had very good parents who taught me very well, very good upbringing. My father was a pastor for most of my life. So, but I found that I had to rediscover the adventure of the gospel, the adventure of what it means to be a human being, to be alive. This story that we've been talking about, that we're all involved in, and reintroduce into my paradigm all those pieces that were unintentionally stripped out. And it's the depth and the grit and the seriousness of the story that I think that in some ways children are even able to grasp more than adults, because at the time I was in many ways bored with Christianity when I was a child.
Oh yeah, me too.
Bored with it, absolutely disgusted with Sunday school, and yet absolutely enraptured in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
And yet here, I could have been presented with the truth of the planet on which we live, of the history of our race. I could have been presented with that truth as a youngster, as a youngling, as they say in Star Wars. I could have been presented with that, the reality of the truth, and I would have absolutely devoured it.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been so relevant to me and adventurous, and I was so hungry for it without even knowing what it was. And there would always seem like there's something missing. There's so much more to this than coloring books and songs and plays and Easter plays and Christmas plays and all these things that are coming from good intentions but are quite banal and superfluous to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I encourage people who have children. Don't strip away the gritty things out of the gospel.
Yeah.
Don't strip away the deep things, the mysterious things. Don't strip away the dark things.
Mm-hmm.
Give your children the story as it's laid out from Genesis to Revelation. Give it to them. Don't dumb it down. Don't make it a coloring book. Don't reduce the patriarchs of the Old Testament to, goofy-looking color book characters. Don't do that to children. Give them the meat, and they'll digest it in some ways better than you will.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the world that they're about to grow up in and I don't know why I got off on this tangent, but I've got 4 kids, especially in the world that they're growing up in, because they will be alive during disclosure. If it's not us, it'll be them.
Yeah.
And they will definitely be alive during the genetic revolution. So they need to know, and they need to know early on. The story of humanity is so incredible, fascinating, adventurous, dire, dramatic, and I think we all need to be delving deeper into it and to stay focused on it and not be distracted by different frivolous religious things that take us away from understanding the deep truths that are available to everybody, to children. To children. Remember, the early church, in some cases, the majority of those who received the gospel in the early church, at least in terms of from the perspective of the Roman Empire and from the Roman emperors in a historical context, were slaves, and women, and children. And that was one of the criticisms against the early church by the intellectuals of the time, by the Roman emperors, and the philosophers, was that this gospel of Jesus Christ was only being received by the simple and the foolish. That, of course, wasn't entirely true. But it is true that it was the prostitutes and the lowly that were so attracted to Jesus.
Yeah.
The throngs that were gathering around him, that were pressing in to touch him and to embrace him and to hear him, were in many cases the simpletons and the lowly, as I said, and the prostitutes and the beggars. Because the gospel, it's amazing, the deepest truths in the universe are not reserved for the secret societies, for the initiated, for the intelligentsia, for the philosophers. The deepest truths of the universe are available to children and to slaves and to beggars, because these are truths that are received in the Spirit. They're transmitted to us. Jesus said, "The words which I speak to you are spirit, and they're life." They're not just formulations. They weren't just formulations of the Greek language or the Aramaic language. They were literally spirit and life to those who were hearing them and receiving them, bypassing the mechanisms of the mind and going straight into the depths of the heart. That's the power of the gospel. The true mysteries of the universe can be transmitted to believers in that way, directly from the Lord, directly from the Spirit of God. And that's my encouragement to people is that capability to absorb the deep truth is in everyone, but especially in children. And I don't know why I got on that tangent, but I did, and there it is.
Well, it's important because a lot of people listening. A lot of people have kids. I have kids. I have 2 and 1 on the way, and that's something that I'm really passionate about as well. Is we shouldn't censor the Bible. I don't believe there's anything in there that we have to censor children from. I mean, it's the Word of God. Now, of course, there's brutal things in there. There's death and dying and wars and there's all that stuff. But it all speaks to a higher truth. It all speaks to the truth of God. And something else too is it's really important to ask questions. And I don't mean this just as a segue for viewer questions. We are going to get into that, but this is something that's important because I think a lot of times in a lot of modern churches, people are stifled from asking questions or even made to feel uncomfortable. I've certainly been in churches like that where you just the atmosphere around. Nobody. You just don't ask the pastor any questions, or you don't ask people questions. And if they don't know, you're not going to hear, "Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting question." You're going to hear something like, "Well, you got to just take it on faith," or some kind of workaround. So So I do think that asking questions is important too, because that takes us down on the road of discovery. Since I did bring it up, I may as well use it as a segue for viewer questions. But because there are people out there who do have questions, which is good. So if you're ready.
Sure, fire away.
All right. For those of you at home, if you would like the chance to send in questions to future guests, you can go to the Sharpening Report Facebook group. Also, don't forget to like the page. There's a Facebook page and a Facebook group. They're two different things, but it's all the Sharpening Report. So, but every time we do this and I have a new guest, I'll put up a post. I'll pin a post on there that tells you who the guest is and generally what the show's about, but you can ask the guest anything. So I leave that up to you. But yeah, Sharpening Report Facebook group. So we have a ton of questions. A lot of them had to do with what we already talked about the possible. I guess I should say the possible attempt on your life. I'll skip those because we already talked about it. But let's see. That leaves. All right, Chad. Chad would like to know when the second DVD for True Legends will be out, and if there is a way to pre-order it now.
It will be out hopefully in early spring. In the May time frame, somewhere in there. Hopefully early May, but I don't know. It's tentative right now because we're right in the middle of editing it. And we had some unexpected content that we added into it. So it will be coming, hopefully in early spring. Right now, there's not a way to pre-order it, but probably in about a month there will be. So we're going to be making some announcements to that effect too. We'll be announcing the title, talking a little bit more about some of the content. We have people will notice that our YouTube page, our Gen 6 Productions YouTube page hasn't been very active. That's because we've been so busy. I mean, I've been locked into this documentary, editing it and doing interviews with people and going places. We've been so locked in and focused in that we just have not had time to do anything else. But we built a new studio. And we're going to be broadcasting from it shortly this month, doing our updates from our new studio. We have an update forthcoming, and in that update, we will be announcing a few different things that are coming down the pipe here. So it is forthcoming. You can expect to see this documentary available for purchase in the next couple of months. And there's a trailer coming too, but I can't say when exactly. But every day we are involved in editing and other things related to the documentary. There's some, we talked about it before in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And since my brain is a little bit more awake now than it was when we started talking, we have a lot of content in episode 2 and in episode 3 that nobody has ever covered and that nobody has ever seen. And so we're again, episode 1, we laid a foundation in episode 1. We introduced ourselves. We introduced the general premise of our topic that we deal with, or the topics that we deal with. And we gave you a little bit of the flavor of how our documentaries, of how our documentaries are put together. Although, let me say this, everything has been upgraded. Everything. That was the benchmark. Everything's better this time. I mean, we've upgraded everything, even cameras.
Oh, wow.
So this second episode 2 is going to be much longer than episode 1 because there's so much content. We've got a lot of other people involved in it, more locations, and content that probably the vast majority of people who are listening to this show and who have been following us have never heard about. So we're really excited for it.
That's amazing. Yeah, we're really excited for it too. And if if it's going to be even better than episode 1, then everybody is in for a treat because
it is better than episode 1. It is faster, more content, better cinematography, and I'm not, I'm not trying to degrade episode 1. In fact, I think if people really want to enjoy episode 2, they should go back and watch episode 1 because episode 2 takes off where episode 1 leaves off.
Oh, wow.
So it segues into episode 2. So if you really want to have an understanding of where we're going, you need to watch episode 1. People, and they can get it right now and go on Vimeo and rent it for $6 or whatever. Or buy the DVD off from Skywatch TV.
Yeah, I should mention that too. That Skywatch TV I think is running a promotion right now, where I think it's the DVD in the David Flynn collection, if I remember right.
I don't remember what it is, but I know it's Skywatch TV. You can get the DVD from Skywatch TV, and people should go and watch it because again, we're launching. That was just we built the launching pad to launch us. Episode 1 launches us into the stuff that's coming, and the stuff that's coming is mind-blowing. And some of the content we had in episode 1, by the way, was surprising to a lot of people, such as, for example, the geoglyphs in Bolivia and in the Altiplano, which we're still investigating, by the way. And we may be investigating with some very famous explorers in the future. In more depth, we touched on it in episode 1, but really, if you really want to enjoy episode 2, go and get episode 1. If you haven't, go watch it, buy it, rent it, whatever. It primes you for episode 2, and episode 2 takes off from where episode 1 leaves off.
Fantastic. Yeah, and if people are interested in getting it from Skywatch with the special promotion, actually last time I checked the website, I think there's 2 different promotions that they have for it. But people can go to skywatchtvstore.com and find it there. You can go to I think it's in the programs, deals or something tab, but just search around in there, you'll find it, and lots of other cool stuff too. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Brenda would like to know how many episodes of True Legends do you and Steve have planned?
We definitely have 3, for sure. We've already filmed a lot of the content for even the 3rd episode. So the next one coming out is episode 2. Then episode 3 will follow shortly thereafter. I don't know how many we're going to do. It all depends on numerous factors. But we'll keep going as long as people want us to. And as long as the resources are there. By the way, almost all the content that we put on YouTube is free. The updates we do, plus the analysis that I've been doing, which I will get back to doing once I finish editing episode 2, it's all free content.
Yeah.
And, we don't make any money on any of that kind of stuff. But to fly around the world, to buy camera gear, to pay cinematographers, all the editing, all the post-production, that's absolutely impossible to do for free. You can't do it. I mean, you guys know. You can't do it. You can't do it. One of our cameras alone costs tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
So if you're going to do a good job, if you're not going to just go out with your cell phone and film stuff, if you're going to actually put together legitimate expeditions and go out and do legitimate investigations, which not only us but you guys and others in the field have done and are doing, it's something that requires a significant amount of funding.
Yeah.
And as I always say, nobody's getting rich doing this.
Yeah.
Nobody. We're lucky if we break even. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring a high quality format, as is Skywatch TV, with what you guys are doing, and again others. We're trying to bring a high quality format that's well researched, that's professional, delivering this to our audience so that they can have resources, so that they can have both the important information, but also in a enjoyable format, an entertaining format, and so that they can have a resource to talk to people. A lot of people write in and email us and tell us how they have friends over. They buy the DVD and then they watch it and then they have a discussion about the topics in the DVD. So, so that's what one of the things that that we want people to understand is we'll keep doing it as long as people want us to, and that means as long as people are interested in the content that we're bringing forth and are willing to purchase the content that we're bringing forth, because nobody's offered us $1 million donation yet.
Right.
So, so, and I say that tongue in cheek, of course, because that's not what we're expecting. We're
Right.
expecting to make an investment and then at least to come out even and to be able to keep rolling over that investment to produce the content. And which so far it's happening. So we're grateful for that, and we're chugging forward. So that's part of my answer as to how many episodes they're going to be.
Amen. Good deal. Alexander asks, did Cain, who slew Abel, have any descendants with the Watchers, or does he think that their genetics also were tampered with?
The line of Cain is an interesting subject. Something very strange about the line of Cain. Now, lots of weird doctrines out there concerning the line of Cain.
Yeah.
There's a doctrine called serpent seed, but it's not one doctrine, it's many doctrines called serpent seed that go off in all different kinds of directions and get really weird really fast and completely unbiblical really fast. So people have to be careful. Some of it's good material, some of it's provocative, and some of it is just like somebody was smoking a bong and then does a radio program or something. So,
right.
So you got to navigate that for those who want to go deeper into the strangeness of the line of Cain. Be advised, some really weird stuff. Now, in terms of Cain having relationships with the Watchers had not fallen when Cain slew Abel. The Watchers came down in the days of Jared, whose name means shall come down. So it was hundreds of years before that event that Cain slew Abel. So the interesting thing is that there is reason to believe. This is one of those things that are floating in my mind, as I said before, concerning the flat Earth stuff and other topics. It's good to float them in the back of your mind, not to cement yourself into anything but the gospel, and then let the other things fall into place as information comes. So one of the things that's floating in the back of my mind is this question of whether or not Cain and Abel were in fact twins. And I believe they were. I don't know for sure. It wouldn't bother me if they weren't, but I think there's good reason to believe that they were. They were twins. And there may have been more to the Garden of Eden, the event that took place in the Garden of Eden, than meets the eye. Of course, there's the question that many people have: who did Cain marry after he slew Abel?
Right.
And after he was marked by God, so that whoever finds him would somehow, because of the mark that was put on Cain, would be afraid to kill him, because it would implicate then the judgment of God. So, I mean, it was something happened to Cain. God marked Cain in a way that would be apparent to whoever or whatever might confront him wherever he went, that would give them the idea, the notion that they'll be messing with God if they mess with Cain, which is very interesting. I don't know what it means. I don't know what exactly the mark was. I don't know. I don't know if it was a genetic mark or if it was something that was tattooed on him. I don't know. But obviously there's something there. But even more provocative than that question is the question of who he went and married.
Right.
Now, many people will say it's very simple. He went and married one of his relatives, one of his sisters, or nephew or nieces. I find that doubtful for a number of reasons. Number one, it seems to me that Cain was banished from his family. And it doesn't make much sense to me that if Cain is banished from his family, that Adam would be willing to allow one of his daughters to go with Cain, who just slew Abel. I get the feeling from the text that he was banished, that he was cut off from the family line. That whoever he went and married had nothing to do with the line of Seth.
Mm-hmm.
Or the line of Abel. So that then opens up this question of the pre-Adamic world and pre-Adamic races. Obviously, we know that Adam and Eve were in a garden.
Mm-hmm.
The garden didn't fill up the whole earth. It was a very specific location. It was a locality on the earth. The Bible makes that very clear. There was a garden on the earth. It had boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So what was outside of the garden? What was outside of the garden? Adam was in the garden.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, he was given dominion over all the earth.
Yeah.
But he was in the garden. So his dominion extended beyond the borders of the garden. But he was in the garden. So what was outside of the garden? Was it just animals? Obviously, there was something. We know God created the Garden of Eden and all the animals therein.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that he created everything else.
Right.
It wasn't like you walked outside of the garden and you're just in a black void, an empty space. There was earth. There were trees. There were rivers. We know that certain rivers passed through the garden on their course to where, right?
Right.
So what was going on outside of the garden is the question. That becomes a very hotly disputed topic.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people say nothing of consequence. In other words, maybe nothing at all, maybe no animals. Certainly there had to be trees and mountains or whatever. Had to be.
Mm-hmm.
Where were those rivers going? Where did they come from, right?
Right.
So there had to be creation outside of the garden. Okay. Then I think it's probably safe to extrapolate that there were also animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go a step further. I would say that there were also entities, sentient entities outside of the garden that were not human. So that's my own postulate. Now, I think that Cain, when he was banished from the family line, he didn't take a relative of his, a daughter of Adam. He went and engaged and, for lack of a better term, had intercourse with something that was not a part of that family line.
Mm-hmm.
But before Cain ever went away, I think there was something already mysterious, suspicious, let's say, about Cain himself. And I think it's... I think we're given a clue later on in the story that I think mirrors the story of Cain and Abel later on, which is the story of Jacob and Esau.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at Jacob, and this is a very long-winded answer, when you look at Jacob and Esau, those were twins for sure, right?
Yeah.
Jacob the usurper holding on to the heel of Esau, right?
Right.
But it wasn't Jacob who was the usurper, it was Esau.
Mm.
Because here you have twins. One of them, just a normal-looking guy. Hey, you know what? I'm a twin, Josh. So
yeah?
I got a little bit of perspective on this.
Oh, cool.
One of these twins is just a normal-looking guy, Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got Esau, who's red and hairy.
Yeah.
So hairy, in fact, that his father, who wasn't an idiot, could be deceived by the skin of a young goat, the fur of a young goat.
Yeah. That's a lot of hair.
So Jacob's mother ties the fur of a young goat on Jacob's forearm so that Jacob's father would touch it and think it was Esau.
Yeah.
Now, either he was a retard, excuse me for the phrase, or there was something very convincing about the hair of an animal in relationship to his son Esau. There was something not only convincing, that was in fact the trademark of his son Esau.
Mm-hmm.
Something so unique and different to Esau that his mother, Jacob's mother, thought, if we tie around your forearm this fur, this animal skin, then your father will think that you're your brother.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. They're twins. They're twins.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob and Esau are twins. Who's usurping what here?
Yeah.
See? Jacob was the one who the birthright belonged to, and I'll tell you why. Because he was human.
Wow.
Esau was the usurper. He wasn't fully human. I'm sorry. He wasn't fully human. I think the Bible is telling us, it's hinting to us, this is a red, furry guy who goes off, by the way, and marries a Nephilim to spite his parents.
Right.
After the incident, he got ticked off after Jacob tricked him out of the birthright. What does he do? He goes off and marries a couple, Rephaim or whatever the tribe was, their Nephilim tribe, to spite his parents. So, who became great irritations to Jacob and I'm sorry, I forgot who Jacob's father was. Anyways, Isaac, that's right. So he became very these Nephilim women who Esau married became irritating. They were very irritating to Isaac. So obviously there's something going on here. And the reason why I bring that up is because Esau was the usurper, not Jacob. Jacob was called the usurper because he was holding on to the heel. But that birthright only belongs to humans, not to hybrids. So here's a question, Josh. If I'm right, and Esau was a hybrid, how did that happen?
Yeah. Do you think that was something left over from... Wow, I don't know. What?
There's three options in my mind. Either A, it was something left over in the gene pool. B, twinning, the scenario of twinning, two different fathers. Or C, some kind of an abduction scenario.
Oh, wow.
And that will sound crazy to people, but I don't care. They're twins, but one of them's a hairy animal, hairy red animal. I'm sorry. That's called genetics. I'm an identical twin with my brother. He doesn't look like an ape.
Right.
He's not hairy he's not a red hairy ape. He pretty much looks like me. Why? Because we're twins. We share many of the same genetic trademarks. That's the nature of a twin. If you have two twins that are vastly different, it's because there's an extra element in there. There's extra genetic information in one of them. Or there's differing genetic material between the two of them. In other words, one of them has a different father.
Wow.
Now, that could have been the case with Cain and Abel. Could have been a twinning scenario. I want people, and of course this is very, very controversial, and I'm not saying I subscribe to this 100%. I'm just floating the idea out there.
Yeah. So
with Cain, with what happened with Cain, we go back to the Garden of Eden. We look at what happened with Eve and the serpent, and I say there's more to that meets the eye. Why? Because I think that the judgment fits the crime. I think that the sentencing from the Father, from the great judge, had to do with the act that was committed, the crime. And if you look at the sentencing, the judgment against Eve and against the serpent, you'll notice that they're reproductive in nature. Eve will have pain in childbirth, in childbearing, and women in general, the daughters of Eve, because of what happened, are going to have pain when bringing forth offspring into this world. It's going to be a painful thing now. That's a judgment. When women are in labor, screaming and crying and slapping their husbands, that's because of what Eve did in the garden. It's not natural to the human race to have pain and childbirth. It was never intended. It's because of sin, specifically because of the sin that took place in the garden. Now, that's reproductive in nature, that judgment. It's sexual. It's sort of a judgment that's relative to some sort of a sexual crime. It's reproductive in nature. But that's not all. Her seed would have conflict with the seed of the serpent.
Right.
So again, here's a judgment that is relational to offspring, which is reproductive in nature. The judgment is reproductive in nature. It's concerning the act of reproduction and of offspring. Your seed will be in conflict, will have enmity with the seed of the serpent, which is a judgment also on the seed of the serpent. So, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I should say apparently, at least possibly, there seems to have been something sexual involved in what took place in the Garden of Eden. Furthermore, and again, that's very controversial. Furthermore, the response of Adam and Eve after their sin was to do what? To put fig leaves on their noses, right? Put them on their ears or on their eyes or on their hands. No. They covered their sexual organs.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Yeah.
They sewed for themselves girdles to cover up what? Their reproductive faculties.
Wow.
Why were they doing that? Because in my opinion, it's those members of their bodies that had caused them shame. So they were covering up that which had caused them shame, that which that had defiled them, not their mouths for eating an apple or whatever.
Right.
Of course, it wasn't an apple. If anything, it was grapes, but I don't know. So here they are, covering up their reproductive organs with girdles that they sewed together because they were ashamed of something that they had done. And a judgment is coming down that is reproductive in nature. I put two and two together, and I find a plausible explanation in a sexual act that might have taken place in the Garden of Eden. Might have. Let me stress that word, might have. I'm not sold out to the idea, but it's something to consider for people who want to consider all the possibilities when looking at the Garden of Eden. So, if that's true, if that scenario I just laid out was true, then you could have had what is called twinning, which is a natural phenomenon that happens sometimes where, and I don't mean to be graphic, but if a woman engages in sexual intercourse with two males within a certain period of time, she can give birth to twins from two different fathers. It happens even today. It's rare, but it happens. If that happened with Cain and Abel, then it would indicate that Cain was of a different father than Abel. And would then implicate the line of Cain in some sort of a hybrid scenario, even before the fall of the Watchers. Now, when the Watchers fell, who did they interact with immediately? The line of Cain. We know that through extra biblical texts. It was Tubal-Cain, who was the great smith, and it was the Watchers who brought the technology of smithing and of weapons forging and so forth to the human race. They were very intimately involved with the line of Cain. The line of Cain was definitely predisposed to receive the teaching of the Watchers. Remember, Enoch was teaching too.
Yeah.
So who was Enoch teaching? Well, the line of Seth. So Enoch was teaching the righteous, the line of Seth, and then, of course, the line of Cain was involved with the Watchers. So that's a very complicated situation. So I think you had a genetic mess before the Watchers even got into the picture.
Wow.
Then you add the Watchers into the picture, and now you've got genetic chaos.
Yeah, they certainly didn't help.
Yeah, they came and they made a real mess of things. But I think
Yeah.
there was something going on with the line of Cain. Now,
Yeah.
I have a little theory I haven't been able to substantiate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the elongated skulls, the Homo capensis,
Mm-hmm.
this genetically different race of human-like entities that we find all over the place, their skulls at least, which are, of course, documented in we know that they're all over the world. The depictions of the Egyptians with the royal lineage having the elongated skulls, and I think that elongated skull race
Mm-hmm.
might be from the line of Cain.
Oh, wow.
And I'm talking pre-Watcher line of Cain. That could have been a genetic trait that was intrinsic, innate in the line of Cain
Mm-hmm.
before the Watchers ever came. That's just a theory of mine. I don't know if it's true. I don't have much proof to substantiate it. But I'll toss it out there for people who are interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Have you? Because this is something I've thought about as well, and I've wondered if this scenario is true, why the and maybe you thought about it longer than I have, or might have a theory on it. Why the judgment for the serpent in the garden, if there was a sexual thing that happened there, the judgment for the serpent in the garden is different than for the Watchers. The Watchers were, bound in the bottomless pit and everything, but the serpent, the judgment was, I don't have the text right in front of me, but you'll crawl on your belly, and eat dust, and yeah, all that stuff. What do you make of that?
Well, I have a rather radical view concerning that. I obviously don't believe that it was a snake.
Right, same here.
That had legs that was judged, and suddenly his legs went away, and now he had to slither around.
Same here.
I don't think that makes any sense. It's illogical.
Mm-hmm.
It's irrational. Consider what it means to eat dust. Consider what it means to crawl on your belly. I have another theory that, again, it's just a theory,
Mm-hmm.
that when it talks about the serpent having to crawl on his belly and eat dust, I have a feeling it might be referring to a class of entities that would be bound to have to live under the ground.
Oh, okay.
That they would be constrained to life beneath the surface of the earth. That they would eat dust. They would be beneath the feet of men. And that opens up a whole can of worms.
Well, it's interesting, and that actually makes sense, because if the judgment on Eve was for Eve and all the women after that,
That's right.
it would make sense that the judgment on the serpent would be for the serpent
That's
and then
right.
any other of its kind.
That's right. So its kind is the key word. So
Yeah.
what was the serpent? Well, we know the devil was involved,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Satan, because the book of Revelations tells us the dragon, that serpent of old,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we know the dragon was involved. That serpent of old. When it says a serpent of old, of course, it's referencing the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the serpent, the snake, is a symbol of the devil, because of the Garden of Eden, and probably because he probably has some adder-like attributes.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with a snake.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing intrinsically wrong with a serpent. So we look at a serpent as being unlovely because of the Garden of Eden, right?
Right.
We have a natural aversion to a snake because of the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of ingrained in us because we're children of Adam and Eve. We're the offspring. And it was this situation with the serpent in the garden that caused us to be bound to this terrible condition of sin and death,
Mm-hmm.
which the cross rectifies. So, when we think about it in those terms, all right, so the devil is implicated with the serpent, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's serpent of old, the devil. But does that mean that the serpent was the devil himself? Or does that mean that the serpent was another entity that was influenced or perhaps even possessed by the devil?
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Was it the devil himself? Or was it an entity influenced or possessed by the devil?
Right.
I don't know. But if it wasn't the devil himself, if it was an entity, let's call it a serpentine entity, sentient, that was influenced by the devil or inhabited by the devil. Remember, we know that this is not something that is uncommon to the devil. Remember, the devil used Peter, the apostle, to try and divert the plan of the Father for Jesus to go to the cross. When Jesus spoke of his death, Peter basically said, this can't be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did Jesus say to him? He looked at Peter and he addressed the devil.
Yeah.
Who was working through Peter. So, which is very interesting. It's very telling the way that the devil operates.
Yeah.
He was using Peter to try and dissuade Christ, which tells us a lot about the devil, that he had some sort of knowledge of what Christ was about to do because he was trying to dissuade him from doing it, that the Son of Man must die, right?
Yep.
And so here's the devil using Peter to tell him, no, you shouldn't do that. You don't have to do that. And Jesus instantly recognizes it as Satan and rebukes him, looking at Peter rebuking the devil. So that in and of itself provides us with context of how it might have been in the Garden of Eden with another entity that wasn't necessarily the devil himself, but an entity perhaps possessed, definitely influenced, at the very least, by the devil. Is it possible that this entity, this serpentine entity, was somehow offspring of the devil? I don't know. Does the possibility exist? I would say it at least exists. Might be remote, but at least exists. It exists. So, if we're dealing with an entity that was not the devil himself, but that was an entity either possessed, influenced, or the offspring of the devil, then we might be dealing with a whole class of sentient beings that were constrained to live in the caverns of the earth beneath our feet.
Wow.
Serpentine entities that were pre-Adamic that have to live in the caverns of the earth or have to live beneath our feet and eat dust, in other words. Be constrained to crawl on their bellies, which might very well be a metaphor. All of these things might be a metaphor for they're underneath the earth.
Right.
They're in the caverns of the earth. The whole hollow earth situation. It's plausible.
Yeah.
And it certainly would explain a lot of different encounters that people have with these kinds of serpentine entities, especially under the ground.
Yeah. So, something else too that I wanted to ask, going back to the possible Cain genetic thing in Esau. How would have, because I know this is something that people are gonna ask, and so I want to make sure I do. How would the I have an idea of how this might work, but I want to hear what you have to say. How would the genetics of Cain survive the flood? Because Noah, it seems like it's all on Abel's side. So how would that have survived?
A number of different ways. There's a handful of possibilities. First of all, we know nothing in the ocean died, right?
Right.
People forget that. So it's interesting when you consider that the animals in the sea did not die. The Bible tells us that everything that was on the land died.
Right.
That was on the surface of the earth died. But the whales and the sharks and so forth, there's no indication that any of those creatures died. And where do we see the prehistoric roots in the animal kingdom? We see them in the aquatic creatures, don't we?
Right.
We see the prehistoric roots in these aquatic creatures more than anything else, such as crocodiles and different kinds of fish that obviously have some sort of prehistoric genetics going on. So it's interesting. All the animals that would have needed land to survive would have died. I mean, it was a very long time that the earth was submerged in water. So every kind of bird and every kind of animal, beast of the field, bird of the air, insects, and so forth would have perished. And of course, humans and other sentients, unless they were able to survive A, in the water, or B, they were able to get off of the planet into the atmosphere before this scenario took place, or their genetics were preserved and reintroduced afterwards in some kind of an abduction scenario.
Right.
Of course, there's always the option of a second incursion, what's called a second incursion, that more fallen angels fell and did the same thing. I don't subscribe to that so much. It's a possibility, but I'm not a subscriber of a second incursion, because the first incursion created monstrous giants.
Yeah.
The second, if there was a second incursion, it did not. There's also another possibility that the technology and the teachings of the Watchers were discovered as described. I believe it's in the book of, it just escaped me.
Is it Jubilees? I think
it's either Jubilees or the book of Jasher.
Yeah, and I think Josephus might have written about it too, if I remember right.
I can't recall exactly which. It might have been written, mentioned by Josephus, but it's definitely either in Jubilees or Jasher.
Yeah.
One of the sons of Noah finds a tablet with some of the teachings of the Watchers, maybe some of the incantations of the Watchers. Maybe he was able to conjure some of these entities. Remember, the spirits of the Nephilim, of the giants, and I think all of the hybrids that were neither human nor angelic, something in between, were sentenced, were judged, and were sentenced to walk the earth bodiless, desiring food, desiring water, having sexual desires, but not being able to fulfill any of the desires of the flesh. Those are what are called unclean spirits.
Yeah.
They knew they were forced to walk the earth bodiless. So these are disembodied spirits wandering the earth, having all of the desires of flesh, but having no flesh with which to fulfill those desires. Very torturous situation. And these are called unclean spirits. The book of Enoch tells us they will be called unclean spirits on the earth. What does Jesus call the demons that inhabit people in the New Testament? Unclean spirits. These spirits knew that there was a judgment. They knew that the time of their judgment would come. Until the judgment, they were told, they would wander the earth until the judgment. And they knew who the judge was. Because when Jesus showed up, they said, "We know who you are, Son of the Most High God. Why have you come to torment us before the appointed time?" So these are the spirits of the Nephilim, the unclean spirits, recognizing the one who would come and judge them, recognizing that this was the Son of God, hidden away, hidden from the eyes of the Israelites, hidden even from the prophets, and revealed only in dark sayings and, sort of concealed language, referencing the advent of the coming of Christ, the first coming. It was hidden away. This was a mystery that was revealed in the New Testament, the coming of Christ.
Yeah.
It was a mystery that wasn't fully revealed until the apostles were given the revelation. And then we get the doctrine of the apostles explaining to us who this man, Jesus, really was. See? So this was the unveiling of the revelation of Christ, which these unclean spirits knew about. They knew he was the one who was coming. They knew it. And so suddenly he appears. The scribes and the Pharisees didn't know who he was, but the unclean spirits did.
Right.
You are the Son of the Most High God. Not just a son of the Most High God, not just some great prophet. You are the Son, the only begotten Son of the Most High God, the judge of the earth. Why are you here now? So obviously they didn't understand that Christ was coming to die to redeem us yet. They didn't understand that.
Right.
They only knew, these unclean spirits, these very ancient entities, these hybrids, only knew that Christ, that the Son of God would come to judge. They didn't know he would come to redeem first in the form of a man.
Right.
They only recognized him as the judge. And they were messing their drawers, for lack of a better term, saying, wait a minute, the time hasn't come yet. Why are you here now? This can't be. And what did Jesus tell them? Basically, he told them to shut up, to not tell anybody who he was. That's what he told them. He didn't want them to tell men who he was. They knew that he was the Son of the Most High. But he didn't want it to be from the testimony of demons that they believed him. He wanted it to be from the testimony of Scripture, from his own words, and from the works that he performed. Those were the that was what bore witness that he was the Son of God. The Scriptures. These are those which speak of me, he told the Pharisees. You search the Scriptures, right? These are those which speak of me. Number one. Number two, if you don't believe me for the words that I speak, because that's the second thing, then at least believe me for the works that I'm doing.
Yeah.
He didn't want faith in him to come as a result of the testimony of the unclean spirits who knew who he was. Interesting paradigm. So these unclean spirits were obviously the spirits that existed in the world before the flood of Noah. Were the entities. They weren't spirits at the time. They became spirits when their bodies were destroyed. Mm-hmm. The unclean spirits, they were in the earth before and after the flood. So they were in the earth. So there could have been something involving them that reconstituted the genetics. Now, it's not a far stretch. Today, we can take the genetics of any animal, of any life, plant or animal life on this earth, and preserve it.
Yeah.
Easily, we can preserve the genes of whatever we want to. So if that technology existed before the flood, certainly the genetics could have been preserved in some form. I mean, there's a multitude of options that are available. I don't believe the genes came through. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. It's also an option that the genes came through either the sons of Noah or their wives. To me, it's less likely. The second incursion and the genes coming through Noah's family are the least likely. Mm-hmm. But somehow it happened.
Yeah.
Take your pick of all the options and many more, which I probably haven't even mentioned. So.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I've heard a lot of different versions of like all the Cain stuff, but you know what? You've clearly thought about this a lot more than I have, and that to me is the most convincing argument that I've heard for it, and definitely
which one?
Well, really all of it, but I mean when we were talking about Cain and the serpent and basically just this whole answer to this question that Renda had. I've heard different versions of that, but you know what we're talking about here, to me, it's the most convincing I've heard so far. So yeah, it's and that's for me that's been something that's been floating in the background of my mind as well. So
look, abductions are happening today. What makes us think that they weren't happening way back when?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are they doing? They're extracting semen.
Mm-hmm.
They're extracting ovum from the women.
Mm-hmm.
They're messing around with the genetics of the human race. They're implanting fetuses. They're taking those fetuses out.
Yep.
Maybe that was happening then too.
Yeah.
And if it was, certainly it could have been some sort of an abduction scenario. That by the way, the doors to these abductions, to these encounters, are often opened through the occult.
Right.
They just don't happen. They happen usually with people who are some way, shape, or form involved in the occult.
Yeah.
Even in many cases. Again, I encourage people, if you're interested in abduction stuff, ufology and abductions, read Carla Turner. Mm-hmm. Read Carla Turner. Now, her material is free online. One of the foremost and first investigators into the whole abduction scenario, and one of the very best, completely undefiled by all this other New Age stuff. She took the raw data, including the stuff that was happening in her own life, and she analyzed it from a very objective viewpoint. And so if you factor in the abduction scenario, then that could easily answer many questions.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I was going to say about that. I had a point before I mentioned Carla Turner, but certainly an abduction scenario could. This is what I wanted to say. This is very important. So if you do the research, you'll find out that many people who are abductees have some sort of a connection to the occult. Even as simple as having visited one time a psychic.
Right.
Even just visiting a psychic one time opened the door for an abduction event. So that tells you, that's very telling, that tells you that the whole alien phenomena, the UFOs and so forth, I'm very firmly in the camp of those who believe that it is a nuts and bolts physical phenomena.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
but
me too.
At the same time, it's also spiritual.
Yeah.
It's both. It's both and. It's not if or. I mean, it's not either or. It's both and.
Yeah.
It tells you the fact that you can go to a psychic, go get your palm read, thinking this is just maybe something stupid or fun or innocent. Suddenly, you're being abducted by aliens. There's something occultic there. There's a door that was open. There's permission. There's authority that was given. You gave authority, you opened a door, and suddenly the Greys show up at the side of your bed. Just because you visited we had your palm read, you went to a psychic. It's that simple. So it could be that at some point in time, the teachings of the Watchers were rediscovered. Some sort of magic was performed, incantation, opened the door for the UFO stuff, right? They came, they appeared on the scene because some human being opened the door for them, just like after World War II or during World War II when the Nazis were opening the gates with all the occult, and then suddenly we get all the UFO stuff happening. That's not a coincidence. They're connected.
Yeah.
And the groundwork was laid in the 19th century with Helena Blavatsky and all the occultic stuff that was happening, the rise of spiritualism and the occult. Culminated in the opening of the door to all of this UFO stuff. Also, right. Aleister Crowley, of course. They're not mutually exclusive. They're very much connected one to another. So if the teachings of the Watchers were rediscovered by the sons of Noah, or one of them at least, or the offspring, it's very possible that rituals were performed, incantations were performed, and the doors were opened, the gates were opened for a reintroduction, a reappearing of these entities, whether pre-Adamic or pre-flood hybrid entities that had this technology, to come back on the scene and to reconstitute the DNA, reintroduce the DNA, their own DNA, or DNA from some of the Watchers or whatever, back into the human genome.
Wow. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and if true, it does answer a lot of questions. That is fascinating. I misspoke earlier. I said that was Renda's question. That was actually Alexander's question, but Renda did have another question, and there's only 2-3 more of these. She wrote, "I'd like to ask him if there's something in his travels and investigations that he's stumped by, anything he's fascinated with and has no explanation for."
Yeah, everything. No. Well, yeah, there's a lot of little nuances that bug me. A lot of them, actually. Now, in terms of the fundamental premise from which we're working, which is obviously the gospel first and foremost, but then also the whole Genesis 6 narrative, the advent of the fall of the Watchers. What stumps me, maybe not stumps me, but what really boggles my mind is to try and figure out how involved were the human beings of the time in the technology, in the building of the megaliths. Were human beings also, at the time, pre-flood humans, able to do some of these things in terms of building megaliths? Or was it exclusively the offspring of the Watchers?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it also the line of Cain?
Mm-hmm.
Was the line of Cain building some of this stuff before the Watchers ever showed up? I doubt that. That question, which I just posed, because really the technology for metalsmithing and so forth didn't happen until the advent of the Watchers.
Right.
But certainly, the early humans, the line of Cain and the line of Seth, were far more intelligent than we are.
Yeah.
They were more intelligent. They were stronger. They were more spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
They were more human than we are.
Right.
In every respect, at least the line of Seth was far more human than we are. We're still human. We're human enough, let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not as human as the line of Seth was in the pre-flood world. So those abilities that are innate in the human race, which were innate in Adam, were much more active in the sons of Adam before the flood than they are in us. Some of those abilities might include sort of that sixth sense that animals seem to possess that maybe we lost.
Mm-hmm.
This connection that we had with spiritual things that was much stronger back then, that still exists in animals to a degree. George Pember believes, as do I, the theologian George Pember, the late theologian George Pember, believes that that part of the human psyche was turned off by God after the fall, definitely after the flood, to protect us from those, from the reality of the ethereal world, of the metaphysical situation happening in the world, to protect us from that because we no longer were capable to deal with it. We had lost the faculty to rightly deal with it. So if we were able to perceive it without really being able to handle it, it would be very dangerous for us. And I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Pember about that. I think that we do have certain faculties that were turned down, that were dialed down either after Adam or after the flood, so that we wouldn't be tormented with what we would be perceiving on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with that as well. Nicole writes in, well, she had one question that we already covered, but she also writes, I'm also curious about, but have not heard much, on Atlantis. Does Tim think it was pre-Adamic, pre-flood? Did the Watchers rule out of Atlantis or their descendants? Any evidence of where it would have been, and how closely does it relate, if at all, to the NWO setup?
Atlantis, in my mind, relates specifically to the Golden Age, the time on the earth when the gods descended and mingled themselves with men. Because Atlantis specifically references that very kind of situation. It was Poseidon, according to myth, Greek mythology, who founded Atlantis, who built Atlantis. And he married a human woman. So there you have the Genesis 6. You have the Genesis 6 paradigm. He takes a human woman as a wife, has sexual intercourse with her, and produces, as his offspring, 10 twins, or 5 sets of twins. And so 10 sons, and they were all twins in pairs. And these twins were giants. So there you have the context of Atlantis. The context of Atlantis is a Genesis 6 context. So in my mind, that seals the idea that Atlantis is telling us about the pre-flood world rather than the pre-Adamic world. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because of the Genesis 6 paradigm of the gods descending, the Watchers descending to mingle with men. Obviously, men had to be around in order for that to happen.
Right.
So we're not talking pre-Adamic, we're talking post-Adamic. There had to be men in order for that scenario to be viable. So Atlantis refers to the pre-flood post-flood paradigm. Do I believe Atlantis was a real place? Yes. But more so than being an actual physical city, I believe Atlantis is an analogy. It is symbolic. It is metaphoric of the pre-flood world in general.
Mm-hmm.
It is both metaphoric and symbolic of the pre-flood world and of the end of the age, which will, the pre-flood world prefigured the end of the age, which is the restoration of the golden age, which is the repeat, the reinstitution of the golden age. And again, the golden age being the advent of the coming of the Watchers, the mingling their genetics with humans, the giants, the hybrids, the defiling of all flesh. So we're going to see a repeat of that in the end of the age. And Atlantis, the 10 kings of Atlantis prefigure the 10 kings of the book of Revelations.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe also we have the text in Daniel where we're told concerning the statue of Nebuchadnezzar with the different cast in the different metals that represent the different empires of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
The last and final phase, the last and final empire, was a mixture of iron and clay.
Yeah.
Which were the feet of the statue, the final empire on earth. And Daniel makes that famous ambiguous statement, that esoteric statement, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron does not cleave, does not mix with clay.
Right.
So, how many toes are on 2 pairs of feet? A pair of feet.
Mm-hmm.
10.
Mm-hmm.
10 toes. 10 kings. 10 kings who are not fully human. They shall mingle themselves. Uh-oh, now we're talking about Atlantis.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the pre-flood world. 10 kings of Atlantis, who were the sons of the gods, Poseidon specifically. 10 giants, who were kings over Atlantis, prefiguring these 10 rulers in the book of Revelations, who do what? Who give their power and authority to the beast.
Wow.
So Atlantis is prefiguring the 10 kings scenario of the end of the age. And I believe Daniel's statement of they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. He's talking about the feet, iron mixed with clay, 10 toes on those feet,
Mm-hmm.
referencing what's written in the book of Revelations concerning those 10 kings, which are giving their authority to the beast. By the way, this entity, the beast, not only will have the authority of men, the total, the complete authority of the human race invested in these 10 kings who give him their authority. He's being given the deed, the title deed of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
He also has invested in him the authority of his father, the devil, who gives him separately his authority, the prince of the power of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is telling us something about the beast, Josh, most people overlook. Jesus had all authority in heaven, the Bible tells us,
Mm-hmm.
because he was the Son of God. But he had all authority on earth as well. Why? Because he was the Son of Man.
Mm-hmm.
Who was given authority over the earth? Men. Before the flood and after.
Oh,
It
wow.
was reiterated, restated, redeclared to Noah after the flood.
Mm-hmm.
Take authority. Have dominion.
Mm-hmm.
Why did God restate that to Noah after the flood? Because the hybrids had usurped it in the world before the flood.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen again. Hybrids are going to usurp the authority of humanity. Let's go back to Jacob and Esau. Who was the usurper? The hybrid.
Right.
Esau.
Wow.
Not Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
Esau was the usurper. The hybrid. So who's going to be the usurper in the end of the age? The hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
They're usurping the authority invested in the human race. It's a fundamental part of the end of the age, in my opinion. So you have these 10 kings, not fully human, in my opinion, again, prefigured in Atlantis, who are giving their earthly authority, which they usurped, to the beast, who has authority to receive it, which tells us something about him. He's partly human. He can take the human authority. He has enough humanity in his genome to execute human authority. So picture that authority being given to him from those 10 kings as a scroll, a deed, right? A contract of authority that they're legally able to give him. Here, he takes it in his left hand. But see, he's the beast. He's not fully human. Because he gets to hold in his right hand authority from the devil, which can be given to him. So he's got the authority of man in one hand and the authority of his father, the prince of the power of the air, in the other hand.
Wow.
Well, that is a bastardization of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of Christ, who is the son of his father, his heavenly father, invested with all the authority of heaven, but who is also the Son of Man, and able to open the scroll and take the deed of the earth as a human being. So he's got the authority of the human race and the authority of the Father. So what we have here is a usurpation in the end of times by the devil and the beast, trying to usurp two things. Number one, to usurp the authority of mankind over the earth, dominion of the earth. Number two, to usurp the throne of Christ. That's the end game. That's the devil's end game. Usurpation of the throne of Christ. See, he wanted to ascend, to be like the Most High. Well, there's only one who is the likeness and the image of the Father, who is the perfect likeness and image of the Father. Who's that?
Jesus Christ. Yep.
So when the devil said he wanted to be like the Most High, he didn't want to be the Most High. He wanted to be like the Most High.
Right.
Who did he want to be? Whose seat did he want to usurp from the very beginning? That of the Son of God's, Jesus's.
Wow.
That's what he's coveted from the beginning. He's coveted the throne of Christ from the beginning. The only one, by the way, the only one in the Bible worshipped besides the Father is the Son. No one else. No angel, no other power. Only the Father. There's only one who is worshipped and reverenced like the Father, and that is the Son. And that's for sure. Read the Song of the Lamb in the book of Revelations, which extols the Lamb of God who was slain to redeem from every tribe, tongue, and nation a people for himself. So the Lamb is extolled. The elders, the 24 elders, fall down and cast their crowns to this man, to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's the throne that the devil wants to usurp. And that's what the end game's about. It really is. It's not about destroying us so much. It is to a degree, but it's more about usurpation. That's what the game's been since the beginning, Josh. Think about it. If Cain was not fully human, was the offspring of the devil, for lack of a better term, that's usurpation. That's usurpation of the authority invested in the human race. It's usurpation of the line of the human race from which would come the Messiah also. The game is still afoot. It was afoot after the flood in Jacob and Esau. Esau was the usurper, not Jacob. Esau was the usurper. Jacob was holding on to the heel. The human race holding on and saying, you will not take my birthright, my dominion. I'm human. You're a hybrid. So if you put that in context with everything else, suddenly you realize what the game's about. This hybridization, this this new human paradigm that's coming, humanity 2.0, tricking humanity out of the very trademarks, tricking us out of the very genetic trademarks that give us dominion on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens when we lose it? What happens when the human race loses its genetic trademarks that give it dominion, and something else becomes human enough to take that dominion, to usurp that dominion? Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau. That's the scenario. It's been the same tactic since the Garden of Eden, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It is to usurp dominion from the human race, and it is to usurp the throne of Christ, who is promised the seed of David to rule and reign on this earth. The devil does not have the right, the authority to rule and reign on the earth in the way that Jesus does.
Right.
He doesn't have it. He does not have it. Now he's the prince of the power of the air. He's given dominion. He's abdicated authority from us.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know that? What does he say to Jesus when he comes and tempts him? These nations, the authority and the authority thereof, has been given to me, he said,
Mm-hmm.
and I can give them to whomever I please or choose.
Mm-hmm.
The devil tells us, where did he get authority from? How did he get authority over the nations? It was given to him.
Mm-hmm.
By who? By us.
Wow.
By us.
Yeah.
So he's a usurper, and he's been a usurper from the beginning. That's what he is. He's a usurper.
Yeah.
And believe me, Josh, there are many entities waiting in the wings, both above and below, waiting for the moment when the human race loses its dominion on the planet.
Yeah.
That's a scary scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Do you have any plans of writing a book? Because you really should. You have a way of making these connections that I think a lot of people overlook, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I haven't been doing this a really long time, maybe only about 3 years, but every time we talk, I mean, even just in normal conversation, there's always something that you bring up that I haven't thought about before, and this is my entire life, and it's amazing. If you haven't thought about it before, you should write a book.
I am engaged in the process of writing a couple of books, which is, I can tell you, the most difficult and irritating thing I've ever tried to do.
I hear you. Yeah, it can be
I tell you, I
frustrating.
mean, making documentaries is a piece of cake compared to trying to sit down and write a book. So I'm the kind of guy that, like, I edit the same paragraph 600 times.
Yeah, me too.
So let's just put it this way. I have been writing a couple of books for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I'm my own enemy when it comes to getting a book published. I'm for some reason, documentaries I find easier for some reason to deal with than literature, than producing literature. It's easier to deal with images and sound and music than it is to organize one's thought on paper. At least for me.
Yeah, that makes sense, because with the documentary, you already have all the pieces. You just got to fit them together.
Yeah, you just have to assemble them together. And they are what they are. You can't really go back and change them once you got them.
Exactly.
So I commend you for being able to write of the few books, you've popped out. Well, how many already? 4?
Well, actually, altogether, I think like 11. But of the major ones, yeah.
How old are you?
31.
Yeah, you're a year younger than me, and you popped out 11 books. I commend you.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, of the major ones, it's well, two really, Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots are the ones that really take off, and then my first one was Disclosure. That one's out there, and then a lot of them though were just these little mini study books that I was doing for a while. There's like 5 of those, and
Yeah,
then,
but still,
yeah,
to be able to deal with the kind of subjects that you deal with, to organize them in your brain and then organize them in a text document or on a piece of paper, I tell you what, man, that's tough for me. some people find it easy. Like I feel like Tom Horn and Steve Quayle they probably write books in their sleep.
Right.
They're probably doing they probably are asleep with pads and pencils and laptops and pumping books out, because I don't know how these guys do it. But anyway, in terms of writing books, it's not coming as easily as the other thing. So
yeah, it's tough. After my first book, Disclosure, I found a process that seems to work. You just take a main idea, that you want to talk about, like Cherubim Chariots. I wanted to talk about UFOs and the extra dimensional nature. So you get that big one, then you divide it up into 10 or 12 points that could be chapters, and then those into sections within the chapters, then those to paragraphs. That just works for me. It helps me process everything. And I'm the kind of guy, I'm never totally satisfied. I mean, like I'll look through one of my old books now and think, man, I would have put so many other things in there or change this around. You're just never going to be totally satisfied. But
once it's published, you can just kind of push it to the side, put it on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it's not published,
yep,
that's when you're never satisfied and revisiting the same paragraph 1,000 times. So you got the right idea. You just pop them out, get them out there. It's done. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. I'm trying to get to that point. Just it's done. It is what it is. Move on.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm still trying to get over that. So
it's understandable. There was one more viewer question, if you have a minute.
Sure.
Hewitt asks, has he done any research into dragons in medieval times, and if they have any relation to the Nephilim?
Okay, this is actually connecting to the other question.
Okay.
This is going to correlate with the question about have I ever been vexed, or whatever the question was, by anything I've seen in the field. Well, more than what I've seen in the field, there's one question that vexes me, terribly vexes me, is the dinosaurs.
Right.
Are the dinosaurs pre-Adamic? Are the dinosaurs pre-flood? Are there still dinosaurs around?
Mm-hmm.
We could say yes. Essentially, a crocodile is a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
That question vexes me, because there's a lot of evidence out there surfacing now that the dinosaurs are much younger.
Yeah.
Than what people have assumed. But then there's also evidence that could suggest that the dinosaurs were part of a world that existed before the Garden of Eden was planted. So I don't know how or where exactly to place dinosaurs. In fact, I don't think too much about them. They could have been just monsters generated by the fallen angels through either genetic experimentation or intercourse. We know the Book of Giants tells us that which was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the Watchers took for themselves 200 different kinds of animals to copulate with. So were they just trying to create, like mad scientists trying to create demonic pets? I don't know. But dinosaurs, here's an interesting thought, though, Josh. Dinosaurs, remember that it wasn't until after the flood that mankind and animals were permitted to eat flesh.
Right.
After the Garden of Eden, we still had a situation in which the eating of flesh was not supposed to be happening. And that's part of what might be indicated when the Bible talks about defiling the flesh. Could mean in a pre-flood paradigm could be referencing not just sexual stuff, but also the fact that this animal was eating that animal, or these people were eating these animals, or these people were being taught to eat animals. Eating of flesh was not condoned. Was not permitted in the pre-flood world.
Wow.
So that's something we have to remember. So why do I say that? Because we got these freaking animals that are like built to just eat stuff.
Yeah.
Right? We got these animals that are just eating machines. They're just like monsters that are bred to eat stuff.
Yeah.
To devour stuff. Which is very interesting if you think about it in that context. Here, you're not supposed to be eating flesh. You're not supposed to be shedding blood. And what, we got these dinosaurs all of a sudden? Right during that time?
Right.
So what the heck's that all about? I don't know. Might have just been some very devious little scheme by the Watchers or by the devil to just completely be as insubordinate as they possibly could.
Yeah.
And create monstrous, voracious, flesh-devouring machines. I don't know.
Wow.
Dinosaurs confuse me, Josh.
Yeah, me too. I don't quite know what to do with them either, but that's a really interesting take, and I think there probably is something to that. Well, that is the end of the viewer questions. For you at home, if you want the chance to send in questions to future guests, go to the Sharpening Report Facebook group and join. And every time we do one of these things, I will put up a post about it as early as I can, and give you the chance to send in questions. So again, the Sharpening Report Facebook group will allow you to do that. And if you're having trouble finding it, you can just go to sharpeningreport.com, and there's a link right there in the sidebar. Man, this has been such a good conversation. It always is when we have you on here. If people want to find out more about you or order your DVD, where can they go?
They get the physical DVD from Skywatch TV. Mm-hmm. If you're interested in renting it, you can rent it from Vimeo. Just go on Vimeo and type in True Legends or Technology of the Fallen. You'll see our documentary. Our YouTube page, Gen 6 Productions, we haven't put anything on there for a while, but we will. We're going to be pumping content into that shortly, so go subscribe to that if you want to track with us. And our website for the documentary series is called TrueLegendsTheSeries.com, which hasn't been updated in a while, but is soon to be updated. And we'll also be featuring our Gen 6 updates, which are video updates that we've been doing. They're going to be featured on that website as well as on our YouTube page. That's pretty much it. So people can, if they want to contact me, they can contact me through the website. Mm-hmm. Again, we've had sort of a period which people haven't heard much from us. It's just because we have been absolutely dialed into getting this next episode through post-production.
Right.
That's what we're doing. We're pushing episode 2 through post-production. That's what's consuming all of our energy and time at this moment. So,
yeah, it makes sense. It's a big job. Now, here's an impossible question because we covered so many different things. But if you had to wrap up this entire interview in a final thought, what would you want the audience most to take away from this episode?
That dinosaurs confuse me.
And that's it. That's the only thing.
That's it. Tim Alberino's confused by dinosaurs.
Yeah, the whole interview could have just been 3 seconds long instead of 3 hours. Tim, what do you think of dinosaurs? Confusing. All right, see you next time.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
I think obviously the most important thing that we discussed was the importance for people to the critical component of everything that we're talking about, and everything that has to do with anything is to mature in your walk with Christ, understand the gospel, make sure you're well-founded in the gospel, and don't get carried away with doctrines and ideas that are not central to the gospel. Don't trash possibilities concerning other theories. We were talking about flat Earth and things like that. Mm-hmm. Don't trash those ideas, those possibilities. Don't get locked into some dogmatic viewpoint other than the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is the glue that holds everything together. Mm-hmm. Don't get so locked into a theory, a flat Earth theory, or some other theory that you ignorantly throw to the wind every other possibility. that's what's happening right now. It's a great concern of mine. Not bashing flat Earth people again. I guess I'll end the show with that. Bringing up that topic again. Not bashing people who subscribe to flat Earth. I'm just warning you. Be cautious. Mm-hmm. Be cautious. There's a lot of things that are tearing people away right now. There's a lot of doctrines and theories that are floating around that are really causing great division all over the place.
Yeah.
So be wary of those, and don't become pharisaical in your dogmatic religious dedication to one particular viewpoint.
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more, and that is a fantastic note to end on. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolute blast, and it always is. Fantastic discussion. We're definitely going to have to do this again sometime. Actually, you and like a couple other guests are my most requested. I get the most messages asking to have you back on. So I'm sure after this I'm going to get a lot of that again, which is a good thing.
Well, we appreciate myself and my wife and my kids, everybody's prayers and thoughts, and all the good messages that people have been sending me, and people have even been helping us pay for our hospital bill, which we accrued that night because of the incident. So again, whether accidental or intentional, we're alive by the grace of God. I'm alive to fight another day. And my motto ever since I've been a young man has been, I would like to kick the devil in the teeth before I die. So,
amen.
We're still at it.
Good deal. Well, hang on the line. I'll wrap us up here. That again was Tim Alberino talking. I have written on here talking about his DVD, which we did talk about. We talked about so many other things as well, which is just phenomenal. But I want to hold it up again for you at home. The DVD with Steve Quayle is True Legends. This is the first one of a series, Technology of the Fallen. That's the episode title of that episode. I highly recommend it. As I said at the top of the show, my wife and I have watched it together, and we plan on watching it again because there is just a wealth of information and that we can all use today and for the dark times ahead. If you would like to find more episodes of The Sharpening Report, you can do so at sharpeningreport.com and my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure. Also, as a quick side note, this really has nothing to do with anything, but I just found out after 100 episodes I have been saying youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure, and I guess that's not correct. It's technically a /. So after 100 episodes, somebody finally corrected me, and but it's just youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure, so make sure to subscribe and share. Also, if you care to help support The Sharpening Report, you can do so at sharpeningreport.com. Your donations go to the everyday running of The Sharpening Report and help bring you more episodes as well as more books and other materials. And I'll say again, as I do in every episode, please only donate if you feel God leading you to do so. If you're not sure or if you don't feel led, you can always pray for us. We can always use more prayer. We're not 501c3, not that we're against that. We're just not. So your donations are not tax deductible. And I'm never going to be the kind of person that's going to promise you extra blessings from God or a miraculous tenfold return on your money or anything like that. We're not in the business of making promises for God, but what I can promise is that your help, be it prayer or financial, is greatly appreciated, keeps us going, and is the only reason we're able to continue doing what we do. All that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us on The Sharpening Report. I am your host, Josh Peck, and as always, take care and God bless.